gets back to the consciousness of the people involved. Are we willing to work with the greater good? Are we willing to allow this thing that we've created or invented or come up with to be utilized in a way that benefits all of us?
There are these rules in society. Go and get this license because we're told to. And that is simply a verification that we have the competence to drive.
Project Override.
The beginning.
All right, session 7.
Project Override.
Project Override. We want to talk about licenses, copyrights, trademarks, patents.
Yeah, it's a big subject.
Yeah.
It's a nuanced subject.
Yeah. Yeah, what is this stuff?
Yeah.
Could be stepping on somebody's intellectual property without even knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're limited in our own comprehension of the patent system. And this is kind of where the pre-existing legal jurisprudence regarding intellectual property, seeking out some sort of legal counsel or analysts to discuss whether or not a patent or a technology is infringing somebody else's patent would be advisable. So we're just stating right from the get-go a disclaimer. We have limited knowledge in this area,
Mm-hmm.
and we're strictly going to be talking from a place of discovery.
Yeah. Limited knowledge, but many opinions.
Yeah, right. Right? Because we can discuss that subjective interpretation again, right?
Yeah.
There's all these definitions out there. We could view a definition as an objective stance for what something means. But if you find several different definitions, all of a sudden now you're combining your definitions to come up with a definition for yourself, and it turns it back into a subjective stance, position.
Yeah. Yeah, which kind of leads into the idea of copyright and, Bibles and dictionaries and
Yeah.
yeah.
That King James guy, did he copyright the Bible?
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
Francis Bacon.
Yeah. Exactly.
What about the dictionary? Is that copywritten?
I do believe it is, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So someone has some sort of a priority claim on the creation of that.
Yeah.
They have some sort of ownership over the intellectual property, the IP.
Mm-hmm.
So the patent system, copyright, trademark, is a way of logging somewhere on a registry somewhere that you're the creator, the progenitor of an invention, and therefore you have the right to control said idea and sale and use of that idea or invention.
For a period of time.
Yeah. Right. And there's a whole industry out there of patent trolls, I believe.
Yes, that's the term, yeah.
What about the suppression of advanced technologies?
Yeah. Well, who controls the offices? Who sees the information going through?
Right.
Yeah. So currently there's not a lot of transparency in that, nor is there a lot of control given to individuals. It actually the current system favors large groups of people versus single inventors, because if I have a great idea and I patent it and I can't get it to market in time and somebody else beats me to that because they have more money or a better system or access to the public, they could, in theory, and this happens all the time, have a superior claim on that product or that intellectual property. So it's an interesting game.
Right. And then, of course, one jurisdiction would be, say, Canada, another one, United States, Japan, depending if you're going to the World Patent Office or not. If you haven't patented everywhere, then someone finds your patent, replicates it, produces it in China, makes a cheap ripoff. Exactly. What's the point of your patent then?
Mm-hmm.
What have you really done to protect your idea? Can you even sue them? They're in a separate jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, in some ways, it's like a patent is the right to attack.
Right.
That's often how it's used. So at its core, what patents are claiming to be, or in some way, and what I think we kind of discussed this a bit, they should be, it's more of a recognition of honor.
Right. Right.
Ties into that new concept of basing your society and your governance around natural laws. Because in an honor-based system, a patent is something that would be easily recognized and almost maybe I sound kind of cheesy, but joyfully upheld by people because it's a system that we all benefit from, I guess.
Right. So you're honoring them for their merit.
Yes, for their merit.
You're the first guy that invented that thing. I'm now going to look to you about how to use it since you created it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of bringing the whole like legal attacks away from it, looking at the substance of honoring the creator and giving recognition, and of course, by others purchasing said product or producing it elsewhere, those producers have licensed the patent, and therefore the patent creator gets royalties.
Yes. Yeah. Which, again, all this is up for interpretation. We're just discussing. As things move forward, these things may evolve and shift, but the current environment we live in is very much based off of that. So it's a very important consideration to bring into any kind of infrastructure like this.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You're a musician, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever done a poor man's copyright?
I have.
Yeah.
I actually found I was going through, my dad's also a musician. We were going through some of the old boxes of his music stuff, and I came across a registered mail letter he sent to himself of his first album back when that was what we called the poor man's patent. And so that stamp then becomes the evidence in time. It evidences your intellectual property.
Right, yeah. Poor man's copyright, poor man's patent.
Yeah, poor man's copyright, yeah.
Yeah. I've done the same as well with some of this technology we're talking about. Whether or not that has merit in the future, I'm unsure. But it's the same with, these words, like we were talking about jurisdiction earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me when I was doing some research, say the jurisdiction of here in Canada, the Crown, their jurisdiction is set up via dictionaries with certain terms, like they use interpretation acts.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever you go into their courts and you're trying to argue jurisdiction, if you start using their terminology, their words, well, now you're you're infringing on their patent, so to say. Right? And so it's kind of silly because we're talking about words, but then those words are connecting you to a jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And this is the same for the name, right? I think this is the catch-22 that they got us all in, is they didn't really tell us, they told us, but we had to figure it out. Mm-hmm. When we're born, our parents give us a name, and then of course our parents fail to claim our bodies because really none of us got that closure that we had to do that. Therefore the body, the cargo that came out the birth canal there, maritime law terminology, signed off by the doctor, that falls into abandoned property and then into usufruct of the Crown system. So really the name is patented, and because we didn't claim that patent, now the Crown or this government structure, government jurisdiction, now has ownership over our name. And so you think about it, when we get a driver's license, is it that we are licensed to drive, or are we licensed to use the name? So we can go back to the beginning of contracts where I asked you, like, we don't need no contracts. Mm-hmm. So I ask you, like, do you need a license to drive?
Nah, Mark. But maybe if I'm a little worried and scared and I don't understand,
Right. The bold and courageous would go out there. They would say, I don't need no license to drive. I lost my wallet. Sure, I don't have a license. I can still drive. Mm-hmm. Granted. Great. I'm not encouraging anybody to go out there and drive without a license. Strictly speaking, there are these rules in society, and we go and get this license because we're told to. And that is simply a verification that we have the competence to drive. We were letting the public know that, yes, indeed, we passed that test.
Which is a merit-based system in theory.
In theory, yeah.
In concept.
Right.
But not necessarily in practice.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's a fallacy built on a merit-based practice. So it's the assumption that by getting the license, I've proven to whoever said governing body that I've proven my skills to, I've passed their tests that say, yes, this patented ID is now safe to use these public roads. But what I'm not told is all the information stored on the back end of that patent and how that's used. Does that make sense?
On the license?
On the license, which I'm calling the patent in that sense. Yeah.
Right.
So you end up with a license that's sort of, the concept is actually not bad, is what I'm kind of saying.
Okay.
Like we're kind of wrapping here, but it's like the idea that you have a merit-based evidence that, this person is okay to do this. That's not a bad idea.
Right.
But it's about where it's been taken.
Right. It's been taken, it's manipulated. You can't patent nature.
No.
But somehow they've constructed it to be able to patent our names that are connected to our bodies. And so we've almost been tricked into being patented, nature being patented. But of course, you can patent modification to nature. So if we look at the name, the all caps name, as a functionary piece within their system architecture, the name is used as a transmitting utility. And so it's actually a modification off of nature, your own body, that is used to transmit utilities within society. That's how I see it. And like you said, we've gone far away from the substance of what's actually happening there. We've been duped, we've been tricked. They've used it against us. Whereas before, most likely the system in its truest form could have been benevolent.
Yes. Well, and that's where the technology and the like a central registry could be used to create a new version of that, actually. So if we wanted to ensure that, it's safe on the roads because people know how to drive, which is not a hard skill to learn. It's a pretty basic skill. But that, if that's something that people wanted to still carry forward, then the possibility exists to create that. But it's something that we would control that identity associated with that and what that is used for.
Right.
Right?
Right. So it comes back to control.
It does kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that right to self-determination.
Right.
Right.
And then people coming together to agree on those terms and conditions.
Yeah.
And we get full closure on that. We all are conveyed with the complete comprehension. Yes, we get it. We're on board with these rules. Rather than it being totally convoluted and hard to navigate through their legislation.
Yeah. Which leads us to a couple other ideas. Ownership versus open source.
Right, the big one.
Yeah.
So, damn. Do patents inherently limit innovation? Or does the fact that you have technology that's open source, we're maybe saying that open source allows for innovation? But then that comes back to, if we're looking at the patent, we have to look to the patent owner. And is that patent owner a troll? Or is that patent owner stubborn? And are they hard to do business with? What if they have ulterior motives? They just don't want anyone to use their technology.
Yeah.
Because it would disrupt the whole industry that maybe they have control over.
Well, if you think of the medical industry, there's patents over genes that we all carry. Because if you take a specific piece out of a whole, currently I can claim ownership of that sequence of genes, and then I can create drugs and have intellectual license over that, which is an odd concept to me. It's a twisting of what a patent should be used for, right?
Right.
So it's that current system allows for corruption.
Right.
Because how can you patent a sequence of genes that's in my body? That's nature. But it's like the same concept as what they've done with the name. They've taken a piece of that thing, pulled it out of its natural form, but still laid claim to that original connection to the natural form. So in a way, I look at that as a form of energy vampirism.
Right.
Because it's draining my energy to be involved with that stuff or to use those products, and I have essentially no control over that in a an energetic or spiritual way. So
Right. So cryptocurrency, a lot of these projects started stating that they're open source. Open source, from my comprehension, is the code is open and it can be looked at by anybody. It can be modified by anybody. It can be downloaded, reused. Or we have open source Creative Commons license, but then we're going back into licensing that it's free to the commons to use, and that would probably be based off of the patent owner.
mm-hmm.
But in terms of creating something that's truly open source, I think Cordal and Varus are in the position that they are open source. Their behavior has opened the code base, and whether or not their code base is infringing on somebody else's patent.
It's an interesting concept.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then it goes back to, even, again, jurisdiction. If we're going to be switching jurisdictions, we want to be free from some regulation. We want to join somebody else's jurisdiction. Who are these people that control the copyrights, patents, trademarks to their jurisdiction? Are they reasonable? Would they be willing for us to use their jurisdiction in order to operate this parallel running system?
Yeah. And that gets back to the consciousness of the people involved. Are we willing to work for something towards the greater good?
Right.
Right? Are we willing to allow this thing that we've created or invented or come up with to be utilized in a way that benefits all of us?
Right.
Because eventually I think that we have to have an element of that in the way we behave,
Right.
or we don't evolve. Because this whole idea of a parallel system that we're offering and hoping to create is really founded on those ideas. And it's a slow shift moving forward. But there is the legalities and the real reality that there is, a lot to do with like IP, like intellectual property, that has to be considered.
Right. And I guess this goes back to us speaking about the system being a transitionatory system.
Yeah.
We want to honor this old system as we move into a new system as much as we can. And we are overriding the agendas that are degenerative. So if anybody's on board with these ideas, and we are unaware if we're currently infringing on anybody's patents, we are strictly building on top of blockchain projects that are pre-existing. So the state of those projects, we're unaware if those people are aware of pre-existing patents. And if that is the case, we hope and wish that the patent owners have an open mind to see that there's goodwill here, and that our utilization of the technology is for the betterment of humankind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that kind of wraps it up. We went a little longer than we have been, but I think this is another important subject. So
Definitely.
Hopefully you bared with us through it all.
And I'm sure other people, again, have more to say on the subject that are have more expertise in the matter, but
Yeah. Well, and again, we're trying to give you small summaries of concepts and ideas and the aspects of what has been thought about before going into this. And just to show you how complex and extensive, what we're talking about creating can be and is, and how complex and extensive the system that we currently live within is. So these are all considerations that have to be brought forth.
Yeah, I'll top that off with a saying in one word. Well, a definition of what you just said equals good and meritorious consideration.
Yeah.
So,
With that, we'll see you in the next one.
cheers.
Project overripe.